Hi guys, today I'll be taking a look at a tactile switch with a really long name, the Akko Creamy Blue Pro V5. Let's get started. Now, the Akko Creamy Blue Pro V5 is the successor to the Creamy Blue Pro V3. Although the specs remain almost the same, there's very little differences between the two. Visually, the V5 doesn't have a dustproof stem, while the V3 does. Additionally, Akko states that their actuation and peak tactile points are ever so slightly different, but you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference in person. Now, pricing wise, these go for £10 for 45 switches on Akko's website, placing these in the budget range. And this is what they look like when disassembled. Feel free to pause the video. Now, let's move on to the switch characteristics. On-center key presses are extremely smooth with no noticeable scratchiness or inconsistencies. Off-center key presses are very smooth with only very minute inconsistencies at very slow key presses. Overall, these are amongst the smoothest tactile switches Akko has released. In fact, it's one of the smoothest switches I've ever tested. 9 out of 10. Now, according to Akko, these have a peak tactile force of 55 grams at 0.5mm, an actuation force of 45 grams at 2mm, and a bottom out force of 60 grams at 3.3mm. Now, from the force curve I recorded, the Akko Creamy Blue Pro V5 is outside spec regarding the peak tactile point. In reality, this happens earlier at 0.1mm as opposed to the claimed 0.5mm. Additionally, the switch bottoms out closer to 50 grams as opposed to Akko's force curve, which claims it to be closer to 60 grams. However, they all performed consistently, with switch 3 deviating the most compared to the other two, but this is still within margin and it isn't a concern at all. Now, here's a force curve comparison between the Akko Creamy Blue Pro V5 and the Akko V3 Cream Blue. In reality, their force curves are different to what Akko claims. The V3 is clearly heavier by about 7 grams from the peak down to the valley. Now, here it is against the Invid Drop Holy Panda. You can actually see the difference in the kind of tactility they offer. The V5 has a P-shaped tactile bump, while the Holy Panda has a D-shaped tactile bump. Overall, I found them easy to get used to even with the light weighting, plus they're extremely consistent, which isn't really a surprise given they're from Akko. 8 out of 10. Now, these are definitely quieter and don't sound quite as harsh compared to the yellow counterpart. I definitely prefer these. Overall, I would have really liked these even more if they were as loud as the yellows, but without the harshness. 7 out of 10. Now, take a listen and enjoy. Now, just like the yellow counterpart, these were also consistently lubed from factory, so that's another plus point for Akko. However, despite that, I found its tactility lacking. I don't find these as appealing to type on compared to the V3 from a few years ago. Don't get me wrong, I still like the switch, but I don't think it's for me exactly. I also prefer heavier switches, but these were surprisingly great to use on a daily basis. I didn't make too many typos, so I was spared from the usual frustrations, and I genuinely enjoyed typing on them throughout my testing. Overall, I'd be out there buying these in bulk if they were heavier and featured a sharper tactile bump, but there's still a really nice tactile switch even as they are. 8 out of 10. Now, unlike the yellow counterpart, these did not struggle with slow-paced games. They remained consistent without any hesitations or sluggishness. This is also true with fast-paced games, although I wish they were more tactile as they pretty much performed like a linear switch in many scenarios, although this is the case with many tactile switches too. Overall, they're a great switch for gaming. It's really down to your preference whether you go with these or its yellow counterpart. They both perform well here. 8 out of 10. In conclusion, if you already have the V3, these are basically pointless to you. But if you're still using scratchy tactile switches, these are a solid upgrade, especially given its price tag. The final score for this switch is 40 out of 50 or 80%, ranking it in the top 10 tactile switches I've reviewed. And that's it. Next time I'll be looking at a clicky switch perhaps. It's been a while after all. Until then, take care and goodbye.